The shock and awe that both defined and deified King Crimson were completely absent from the whimsical, slightly stoned sounds still emanating from Canterbury. The remaining wildflowers now took the road out of town as a band called Caravan.
When half of the Wildflowers as such went off and formed Soft Machine and managed to get a record deal, we thought that perhaps we could do the same. So we were very much like looking to see how they were doing and trying to do the same thing ourselves.
I suppose with the Canterbury scene you have progressive music at its most melodic. It's to do with these people being able to write quite good tunes, being in contact, I think, with a kind of British melodic tradition, which maybe has to do more with 20th century classical music than with pop music. You know, you hear distant echoes of Vaughan Williams and Britain and that kind of thing.
Sitting in my treetop world, doing nothing at all.
Certainly the surrounding countryside and what have you, we seem to get, you know, a bit of inspiration from all that, sitting about in the sunshine, making up bits of music.
Envy me, all you want.
Living off girlfriends, you know. Great fun.
But join me anytime if you please.
Court jesters, crimson kings, lost souls, and magic men. This was a broad church. A very English music, infused with childhood fantasies and the quirkiness of a small island race.
Spike Milligan, Edward Lear, you know, Lewis Carroll, stuff like that. And we had our own kind of built-in popular surrealism right from the humorous poets and writers of the late 19th, early 20th century. Long before they invented surrealism, actually, on the continent. You know, we had Lewis Carroll.
At that time, we were making quite a large effort to be English. Right? But probably why we didn't go down too well in Germany whenever we went there.
Charterhouse Public School. A group of young scholars, inspired by the ambitious compositions of Procol Harum and King Crimson, embraced this new, mature pop music as a way of dodging the professions for which they'd been groomed.
We found it a bit of a tag over us, you know, public school boys. What are they doing? You know, what do they know about music? Where's their pain, sort of thing?
We were in a school that was designing kind of to people go out and to go into the sort of civil service. You know, you often talk about sort of getting into music being an escape from kind of poverty and stuff, which perhaps it was for a certain kind of people back in the late 50s and early 60s and stuff. For us, it was a kind of an escape from a totally sort of predetermined career choice, if you like.
I was banned from playing the guitar at my entire time at Charterhouse. I don't quite know why. I think they saw the guitar as a symbol of the revolution. And I was going to start it off in my house with my guitar, so I was always, you know, under the thumb of my housemaster for that reason.
They wanted to be songwriters, but bands were now playing their own material, so they formed their own band, called it Genesis, and did what every other group now seemed to be doing: retreated to the country to get their heads together.
There's a phrase, getting together in the country, man. I mean, but actually I think being removed from the business was actually really quite important for us. The time at Christmas Cottage was when we first sort of became a band and started writing, I think, with our own sound.
And it's what came naturally to us, really. We were kind of embedded in sort of English and also European sort of classical traditions as well, but also in terms of, you know, I think a lot of the lyrical stuff we would take from English things. We were influenced by sort of T.S. Eliot and fairy stories and stuff like that.
People forget there weren't that many bands in those days. You know, it was like a blank canvas. So as long as you were half decent and had a bit of a sound and were good live, you had a bit of a chance as a career, you know.
We like audiences that sit down and listen to the music rather than get drunk and pick up girls. And we like audiences that sit down and listen.
While Genesis focused on songwriting, other bands were mastering their instruments and finding new ones. Technical virtuosity was fast becoming the essential protein in progressive rock's DNA.
I just don't believe that a drummer should just keep time. Because if you want time, you know, buy a metronome, you know, don't come and speak to me, you know. I think music, you make it for yourself. If the chap next door likes it, isn't that fantastic?
I do think self-indulgence is a good thing in art, because if you're trying to please other people all the time, you just stick to the same model all the time, and nobody hears anything new, so nobody expects anything new. It's like that.
You play a note and you project it out, even if it's one note. You can either go dong, dong. It's more than just playing the instrument.
It's not cool these days to play your instrument. You know, it's just jangly guitar music. It's jangly. That's what you do. But to actually play a solo or something nice, something that speaks, something that gives you a little kind of emotion or a little buzz or makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck, I don't think that's not cool. That's not part of this age.
But this was the dawning of the age of the highly accomplished player, the name musician. In 1970, Crimson man Greg Lake, plus Nice man Keith Emerson, plus Crazy World man Carl Palmer, equalled bass, keyboards and drums, equalled prog rock's first supergroup, equalled ELP.
We weren't a rock band, we weren't a blues band. Emerson, Lake and Palmer was a kind of, was a European group that played classical adaptations. Yes, we could rock out, but we didn't hang our hat on being a rock band. In actual fact, it really was a thoroughbred musical statement we were making. You need the playing expertise so your colleagues know that you are the bee's knees, but just give them some entertainment as well, and that's what it's all about. That's my philosophy. Call it show business, actually. Somebody jumping over their organ or sticking in knives to hold down a fifth or a fourth, a chord, musically is valid. Visually it's right on it, and it is rock and roll.
ELP's technical expertise and crowd-pleasing antics elevated musicianship and ticket sales to new heights. Progressive rock popped its head out of the underground and glimpsed not only show business, but big business. Progressive rock wizard Rick Wakeman was amazed when he first saw what Yes were now up to with their psychedelic guitarist Steve Howe.
Everything that happened in the 70s, this is it, was to do with psychedelia, you see. Psychedelia may have quit, you know, as a fashion in 1968, but when I had joined Yes, I was still a psychedelic guitarist in my mind. I would not play blues cliches for love nor money.
I was just bowled over because everything was wrong. Bill Bruford had the most incredible, unusual tuning of the kit, and they mic'd it up. Nobody mic'd it up then, and it was the most fantastic drum sound I'd ever heard.
There were funk elements, there were classical elements. You know, there'd be a freeze section or some sort of psychedelic vamp or a funk thing, because we like Sly and the Family Stone, so we need some of that.
Chris Squire, most bass players tried to get as low as they could to make your trousers flap. Chris wiped out all the middle and had all the treble turned up and used a Rickenbacker where everybody else was using Fenders. I thought, that's outrageous. And then Steve Howe, when everybody else was using like big stacks of various things, had a little Fender Twin, you know, and had a Gibson semi-acoustic.
I played any kind of guitar that you could think of that I liked. So I went on to mandolin, steel, and all the kinds of, you know, 6, 12, Spanish.
What? What's going? And then, of course, at those times, every lead singer was 6'6", long, greasy black hair. You could smell them from the back row. And on comes this little fella who's got an alto voice.
Waitman wanted in. But when he got the call, it wasn't an easy decision.
On the same day that Yes asked me to join, David Bowie asked me to form Spiders from Mars with Mick Ronson, which was, when I look back, I mean, that's one hell of a choice.
Progressive music wasn't the only gig in town. Top of the Pops, regarded as a total sellout by any self-respecting prog rocker, was by now home to artists like Bowie, Roxy Music and T-Rex, bands still making singles hits, and girls dance. For Robert Wyatt, the Soft Machine party was all but over. The band had matured into a jazz fusion quartet with little sympathy for his pop sensibilities. Goodbye the UFO Club. Hallowed the Albert Hall.
You know, very respected and so on, but nobody was dancing anymore, and I sort of thought, oh, you know, I never really quite made it as a proper pop musician. We thought we were a pop band. It's just that, you know, I just came. I always try to make normal records. They just don't come out like that. We could have made a really good pop LP and, you know, been in the charts and be in those films about the 60s, and we blew it.
Wyatt was eventually sacked from his own group.
I mean, I resented it for a while, you know, and I got cross, I think. I used to feel about Soft Machine a bit way Palestinians feel about Jerusalem, you know, I think. This one was mine.
Without Wyatt, Soft Machine moved into purely instrumental compositions, avoiding the problems of lyrics. My Baby Done Left Me never did work with complex musical structures. This music didn't want the blues, it needed fantasy and myth. Cupid meets Psyche, not boy meets girl.
We hadn't really experienced much outside education. So I suppose in a way that's partly why we wrote more about, I suppose, fantasy lyrics, different situations about life rather than boy-girl things.
I was come from a sort of, you know, public school background, very self-conscious, could never have expressed anything like that in a song in those days. So it was much easier to go back to kind of Greek myths and write things like that, you know. So we plundered sort of Ovid and anybody else we could find, and we're all a bit the same, really.
There was an audience of newly educated sort of university students who were just crying out for something that they've read in science fiction, and they wanted a sort of musical version of that. And of course there was The Lord of the Rings, and there was Mervyn Peake and Gorman Gast, and people wanted that in their music.
Ambitious music demanded ambitious presentation. What began with Sgt. Pepper now became the glorious norm. Albums adorned with lyrics, paintings, cutouts, pop-ups and pull-outs. The gatefold sleeve opened like a window onto brave new worlds and provided the perfect prop on which to roll a joint.
Yeah. I think the album cover, the artwork, and a vinyl, when you bought that, that was a piece you could hold it, you could look at it, you could tell that it was big, you know. When this suddenly went down to the jewel case, to the CD, oh, you know, you couldn't have the detail, you know, because it was too small, you know, I needed one for each eye, you know.
Oh, it's hard not to start sounding like, you know, in my day, the gatefold sleeve, but it's changed now, you know, music is now, it's not something that people hold the article.
It was a whole event of getting an album, getting your album home, putting it on, reading the bits and pieces, learning a bit about it. It was absolutely fantastic. And we lost that. And when we lost that, we lost an awful lot.
So welcome back to Days of Future Past. This is the home of Roger Dean, the artist who most successfully translated progressive rock soundscapes into landscapes. He gave Yes their distinctive brand logo and imagined worlds that at the time still seemed like beautiful possibilities.
Whether you're designing just a box of matches, you're predicting one little teeny minuscule part of the future. I think what's terribly astonishing and disappointing is how little of the promise of the future turned out. You know, in the 60s, people walked on the moon. In the 60s, there was colour television, you know, and no one has gone back to the moon. I think people would have been shocked if they could see the year 2008 from 1968 perspective, at how astonishingly little the world had improved compared to our ambitions and expectations. Had we planned it properly in the 60s, this is how it might have turned out. I try and find out what was motivating them to make the music and work on the same sort of ideas, if that was possible. It wasn't always possible, but sometimes it was. Sometimes there was a great synergy between the ideas that motivated the music making and the ideas that motivated the art. But it was not the music itself, it was the ideas behind it. I was lucky that the images and the music seemed to be an absolute perfect fit sometimes, when in actual fact the process was beyond analysis.
Yes, recording sessions were also moving beyond analysis. The hippie democracy the band chose as a way of life made for difficulties in the studio. Their fifth album, Close to the Edge, took over 3 months to perfect.
It took 3 months because Simon and Garfunkel had done Bridge Over Troubled Waters, which took 3 months. We heard this and we thought, well, by golly, our next record's going to take 3 months and a day if it kills us. So, of course, this is the infantile way we behaved. We took 3 months and a day.
We established a whole new vein of length of how long we play. So, yeah, we got some musicianship. We got a lot of writers in the band, because Bill wrote, you know, everybody wrote in the band.
You know, can I trade your idea for my idea? You've got 5 guys writing imagine 5 guys writing a book.
Steve said, well, I've got this silly little line that I've had lying around for ages going ding 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 doo 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 dum dum dum.
It was all horse trading, muscle power, strongest guy, thickest skin.
Chris said, I've got this bass run. And that was it, really. And I went, anything else? Is that? He went, no, that's it.
And when we got to what turned out to be, for me, the high spot, which was Close to the Edge, really, I don't know how that record got made.
Okay. Some days we got in the rehearsal room after, like, you know, yesterday, got in the next day and said, does anybody remember how we went from the last verse into that? No.
And say, well, I want that bit on the end of that, but I don't want to do it in that key because it works nicely the way I play it on guitar on that. So they go, oh, we'll have a cup of tea, Rick. You work out how we go from there to there.
We couldn't do a song in 5 minutes. It went to 10 minutes on the Yes album, and we got to Close to the Edge, and we thought, oh, this just isn't long enough. We can't. This is like a symphony.
those days there were 2 or 3 albums which weren't so good, getting you towards the winner, the one that the thing existed for, which was close to the edge. That's the moment you exist for in a rock group, and it's terrific. And you think, that's the cookie, that's the one right there. Done deal. I'm gone. I left then.